So it's useful to understand where quantum teleportation fits kind of in a quantum network more broadly. So in order to do that, I'm going to go over the diagrams on this slide here. So the top box here shows the first step before you would even think about doing quantum teleportation. In a quantum network, first you would want to establish entanglement between adjacent nodes. So this step would be the elementary entanglement generation step. And here, these gray boxes represent quantum nodes, and the lines represent the entanglement that is generated between these nodes. And then the entanglement that's initially generated between two adjacent nodes is generally not pure enough to be used usefully or to be used for quantum teleportation or anything else. So this next box shows a step, the distillation and purification step. So in this step, further processes happen which can purify this entanglement that's been established between these two nodes. And then this third box shows entanglement swapping. So in this step, we have many nodes, and we have entanglement that has already been generated between adjacent nodes. But say we want to swap the entanglement so that two nodes that are not adjacent can share entanglement. During this process, this step, this can be accomplished. And finally, in this last box is the quantum teleportation step. And this is what we'll be focusing on in this webinar today. So in this step, we can actually, we begin already with shared entanglement between two nodes, and they don't have to be adjacent nodes. They could be separated by many miles and by many nodes in between. But what happens is one of these nodes has an additional qubit. Here it's shown in yellow. And this additional qubit, the state on this qubit, can be teleported to the node that might be many miles or many nodes away. And this is the quantum teleportation step. So in this quantum teleportation step, we're going to kind of zoom in on this step and look at all of the components that are required for this. Like we saw in the previous slide, we have two nodes, and here these nodes are going to be just labeled Alice and Bob. And Alice has two qubits, like was kind of shown on the previous slide. And Bob, in this example, just is going to have one qubit. And Alice and Bob are already sharing entanglement between two of their qubits. Here, these qubits are labeled A and B. And this was shown on the previous slide as well as the line that was connecting the two nodes. And here it's just shown as the squiggly line. So there isn't actually any actual physical connection, but we're just diagramming it this way for as a useful kind of shorthand. So Alice has an additional qubit here labeled C, and this is the qubit that might have a secret state on it, and perhaps she wants to send this state to Bob's qubit. In order to do that, Alice is going to perform a Bell state measurement between her qubits A and C, and that is going to teleport qubit C to Bob's qubit B. And we'll be getting into a little bit more later how that actually happens. The entanglement that's shared between Alice's qubit A and Bob's qubit B, this is actually what's known as a Bell state, and I'll also be describing that a little bit more later in case you aren't familiar with that. And lastly, there is also experimental control required to coordinate all of this in the real world, and this requires both hardware and software. So we'll be also talking a little bit about that in later slides. So let's start with this hardware, and so that maybe we can get a little bit of a physical sense of what some of these things might look like.